The Maple Leafs returned home but got slaughtered by the Wild. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Thank you for making us your daily listen, and just a reminder that we are a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast. You can find us every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. The Maple Leafs fall to the Minnesota Wild 6-3 on Monday night prime hockey. Typically, they got a pretty good record on Monday nights, but not tonight. The Leafs, looks like they left their game on the West Coast because that was quite the ugly performance.
Yeah, not great. Just right off the hop, you kind of knew that they were going to be in for a tough night. And, you know, we've talked about it before, how that return from the West Coast has always been kind of tough for this Leafs team. And, like, there were some signs.
Yeah, it's tough for any team. Like you talk to any NHLer, right? Guys who play in the NHL. Like O-Dog says it all the time on Overdrive. He's like, you know, coming back home, west back to east, like those Eastern teams, that first game back is tough. It is difficult, and it's almost a scheduled loss. Now, the Maple Leafs are not in a situation where they can have scheduled losses. They've dug themselves deep into a hole where they can't afford to give up those scheduled losses. You know, they got to turn those losses into wins somehow. Tonight, they were unable to do so. I mean, it was flat right off the top. You know, they scored that goal late in the first period. I thought maybe that would give them momentum. You know, you're only down a goal through 20 despite, you know, being outplayed, and figured, okay, if they can play, you know, get their act together for the final 40 minutes of this game with all the injuries that the Wild had, the fact that they're in Toronto, they had home ice advantage. The Maple Leafs at that point, I felt good, should be able to come back and win that game, but went from bad to worse in the second period. And all of a sudden, Marcus Foligno, looking like his father out there, Mikey Foligno, scoring left, right, and center, ends up with the hat trick in the Maple Leafs. You know, they end up giving up 3 in the frame. They lose 6-3 to the Minnesota Wild, and you know, leave a valuable 2 points on the board.
They do. It's valuable 2 points. And like we came to this game thinking like, yeah, the Minnesota Wild are a good team, but they're a banged up team. Who are they really gonna have to worry about on offense other than Kaprizov? Like you have guys like Zuccarello, Ryan Hartman's playing top line center for them, and Marcus Foligno's like, I got us. We're good. Tarasenko also as well. But yes, a lot of it was just like the Wild took advantage of a lot of miscues from this Leafs team. Like it's the Wild played well. They pushed the tempo, they pushed the pace in a lot of ways, but the Leafs just they looked like a team that was not in it. And we've seen this obviously at times this year, but it snowballed for them. Like they allowed a couple, and it kind of just you find yourself down 5-1, and it's just like, ugh. How did it get that ugly?
Well, it's like a month ago, the last month, they've done a good job of being able to like stop bleeding, and you know, they've been able to turn their game around kind of midway through the hockey game on a dime, or you know, in the third period, they've been able to come from behind. But it seemed like they just weren't able to stop the bleeding in this one. Where over the last few weeks, since they've turned their game around after the Mark Savard firing, does seem like they've been able to kind of plug things, stop the bleeding, and then, you know, move forward. It didn't seem like it here in the second period, where it was just like, you know, 3 quick goals, bang, bang, bang. Like that game, it was over at that point, and the Leafs were down 5-1, and it was like, okay, I guess this one's not the one the Maple Leafs are probably going to come back on. They scored a couple in the third, you know, to make it somewhat close, make it, you know, attainable at the end, made it 5-3, but ultimately, they couldn't finish off the hat trick. And look, the Wild were the better team at the end of the day. They were the better team. You could tell that the Leafs were rested, or the Leafs were tired after that really hard road trip. They've had a hard schedule too. Playing top teams, tough teams, and the Wild, that's a pretty strong, they play a heavy brand of hockey. So they leaned on them quite a bit, and there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fighting in front of the net. Like they went to the net hard. They had a lot of opportunities, and Minnesota earned the win. That's not all there is to say about it. Sometimes the Leafs, you could be happy with the performance, but upset that they didn't come away with points. At least didn't do nearly enough to win tonight's game at the end of the day. No. And that's what it comes down to. They got to perform a whole lot better. And I'm not using the, coming off of the West Coast trip excuse. Like I said, the Leafs aren't in a position where they can use excuses after losses. You just got to play better. Simple as that.
Yeah, play better. And like the Wild, they weren't doing anything over the top. Like the one goal that they scored, the Tarasenko play, I think it was the second goal. Unreal play. Give them that all the time. Like those are tough plays to stop. But it also just felt like the Wild were making the Leafs, forcing the Leafs into a lot of mistakes.
That was also like
battles.
A terrible change on that goal as well.
Yeah.
Like to allow Foligno, I think it was McCabe who went off. I think it was McCabe who went off, and it just, right through the middle, Tarasenko was able to get the puck and go in on a breakaway. So that was, another one of those just like miscues, like just, you can't
allow that. And look, and a lot of people are sounding the alarm on Joseph Woll. I get it. He didn't have a great night either. But if you really think the Leafs put out a good effort in front of their goaltender, like I'm not ready to have the goalie conversation yet, because I've seen how teams around leagues goalies have played, specifically in this Atlantic division. It's like the least of my concerns right now when it comes to this Leaf team is goaltending. When you get outshot, at one point they were being outshot like 32-18 in the third period, and it got close. It tightened up because Leafs finally decided, we're within a couple of goals here. Let's try actually playing a little bit here. Like, at some point, it's just like, where was that in the first period? Where was that in the second period? Right. So I do think that, like, I think the overall effort from the team it was subpar. The result they got was a deserved result. And you can't just flush it because you've got very important games coming up, and you're at home, and this is usually where the Leafs have done their damage, is at home. Like, they have not lost at home very often, right? I think the last time they lost at home was, like I'm thinking like last in December, like was probably the last time. They have been on a run right now, winning at home. Like this is, and that's part of it's also disappointing. Is just like you play half decent, you play well enough on the road where you get, some valuable points there. You make up a little ground, but not too much. So you can return home. It's like, okay, this is now where the Leafs should be able to put together some, a good stretch. Granted, they have some tough teams.
December 13th, they lost to Edmonton. That was the last time that they lost on home ice. December 13th. Now, they haven't played a lot at home. They've been on the road quite a bit.
Right.
Since the new year. But, December 13th. So, it's been well over a month, since they had lost the game. They had won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight prior to that. But you just wish that there was a little bit more urgency at the start of that game. Because if there was, obviously we know when the Maple Leafs start on time, it usually follows through the rest of the game. So it's just unfortunate that it took them till the third period to really get going and find their game. Because you got Detroit coming to town next up on Wednesday, and that's a team who's at the top of your division. Like, you got to try and grab points off Detroit, and then Mitch comes to town on Friday, and then you got the Avalanche coming in on the Sunday, and then what do you got? Buffalo comes in, another team ahead of you that you're trying to grab points off of. So it's a really tough stretch here, and starting off with a loss to Minnesota, who had lost through the last 4, and they've been giving up a lot of goals recently. Felt like this was one that you could try and get that win. Now it makes that game in Detroit almost, like a must win, It's too early in the season to call these must-win games, but man, that's an important one. That's an important one, right? Like you look at this 5-game stretch of Minnesota, Detroit, Vegas, Colorado, Buffalo, 6-game stretch, really, actually. Or no, 5-game stretch. Detroit's probably the most important one, followed by Buffalo. And then Minnesota was probably the easiest gettable one, you could say, with all the injuries that they had. But they didn't get it. And now that makes that next game on Wednesday against Detroit that much more important. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, though, Dave. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get to the good, the bad, the ugly from tonight's 6-3 loss to the Minnesota Wild. And the Maple Leafs lose out on a possible top defenseman via trade. Rasmus Andersson goes from Calgary to Vegas, wherever we've seen that happen before. We'll tell you what the deal is, what we make of it, and maybe who the Leafs could pivot to with Andersson off the board. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. It's nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed that hits the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets. Long queues, endless screens, and prices changing at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to its fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You just pull up your Gametime app and you check out upcoming games. And you'll be surprised how easy it is to find great seats. And let me tell you, one of my favorite features, you can see the view from the seat within the app. And best of all, I really like that fees are included in the price up front. So the price you see is the price you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying hockey tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with brand new episodes of the Locked On Leafs podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official and join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built for our most loyal fan base. Click in the link down in the description below to learn more and join our team's community. All right, the Maple Leafs fall 6-3 to the Minnesota Wild, leaving a valuable 2 points on the board. Let's do this. We do this after each and every loss. It's time for the good, the bad, the ugly from the game. Dave, what'd you like? We'll start with the good. We talked a lot of bad in that first segment, so we'll start with the good. What'd you like from this game?
See, initially I was going to say the power play, but then they had an opportunity to get them somewhat back into the game, and they fumbled at the end. So I'll say Austin Matthews. I thought he did his best to try to keep, well, maybe not his full best. I thought he did a pretty good job to try to keep this Leafs team in the game. Scored a really nice goal. What a feed by Max Domi on that one. But again, just another show where he's looking more and more like himself. He's not looking like he's hampered by injuries or anything like that. So kind of like what I saw from him. And third line had their moments. I thought, Robertson, Cowan, or Waugh had a lot of good chances. Nice that they got rewarded with a goal. I thought they probably deserved a better, a little bit more, but yeah, kind of like those things tonight from the Leafs.
Yeah, the third line I thought played really well. Like you mentioned, it's nice that they got rewarded. Their underlying numbers were superb. 17 shot attempts to just 4 in the 9 minutes and 12 seconds they played at 5-on-5. They outshot Minnesota 7-2, and then had was it 96% expected goals. So, they really spent the entire time in the offensive zone getting chances, scoring chances 4-0, high danger chances 3-0. So they allowed nothing, and they kept the puck in the offensive zone for most of their time out there, and they really worked the puck around the offensive zone and finally got one to go in. So I'm with you. I liked what we saw out of that third line. And it's nice to see Austin Matthews, pot one, continue to play continue to play at a high level. Ultimately, I thought that I wouldn't say he played well on both ends of the ice. I thought defensively, like a lot was going on. I think he was on the ice for a couple goals tonight as well. But Austin Matthews scoring and continuing to score. It's now, I think, 10 goals his last 10 games for him, which is exactly what you want to see if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. But there was still a little bit more to be desired, I would say, from a 200-foot perspective when it came to Austin Matthews in that top line tonight. The bad, where's your bad lie tonight, Dave?
The penalties. I thought the penalties were just backbreaking penalties. A lot of it was kind of either getting a little too over aggressive, like the Ethan Callum one, where he's on the puck carrier. Just don't have to go too tough on it, right? But this is a penalty kill that we've been relying on to keep the Leafs in games. It did cost them. They went 2 for 3.
Yeah, two power play goals tonight. Yeah.
That's not something you see very often. Like, this Leafs team does not give up, I guess, other than Colorado, right? Like the Leafs don't obviously give up a lot, but like they didn't do a good job covering guys on the penalty kill. Like I think it was the
Foligno goal. Yeah, the tip in.
Where it was tipped, right? You don't like to see those. Like, just got to do a better job battling in front, and like they've been doing a better job at that. Also, Scott Lawn had a rough night in the faceoff dot, and that didn't help. I think he only had one faceoff win tonight. Like, after he had like his historic over 90% in Philadelphia, like that didn't help their case. So I do think that, yeah, the penalty kill was a disappointment tonight.
Well, especially, you talk about, let me see where, because this is why I do love when you look at like the face-off summaries, and you can see how many shorthanded face-offs the Maple Leafs won. So I'm curious. 4-6. So they did win 4-6 of their draws shorthanded. So they didn't get necessarily killed in the face-off dot shorthanded wise, but you talk about who was the player? Scott Lawton, 1 for 10. Yeah, not good. 1 for 10 and 0 for 4 in the defensive zone. So that's not ideal.
And he played quite a bit against some of the better competition. Like, you see Kaprizov out there, and it was the fourth line that was out there. And I'm like, I get it. You expect them to be a pretty good checking line, but it's like, that's who you want to throw out against Kaprizov is your fourth line. I didn't care for that decision. Also, the Leafs were out chance, I think 6-0 or 6-2 in high danger chances allowed. Like, they did not they didn't do a good job getting the high danger areas and things like that, and it cost them. It cost them dearly, especially early in the game. They kind of give Minnesota a bit of momentum early on, and penalty kill has to do the opposite. It's got to bring you momentum when things kind of aren't going your way.
Yeah, since November 15th, the Maple Leafs had the number 1 penalty kill in the NHL, operating at 86.7%. But it was almost the difference tonight. You give up 2 goals to that wild power play, and it really kind of put them in the driver's seat when all said and done. The ugly, Dave. What was ugly for you?
This is the defensive zone coverage. I just thought they're playing defensive zone. They're very disorganized. I thought Jake McCabe had a brutal night for me. Like, the second goal, don't really know what he's covering on the play. And like, there's been a few of those gaffes I've seen the last few games, like in Winnipeg, where he just decides to allow a free lane to the front of the net. Like, he's got to be better. I understand that the blue line's taking a hit, and a lot of it falls on him to kind of be the stabilizing presence. But I thought Brandon Carlo didn't exactly have great evenings themselves.
Yeah, he was on the ice. Let's see. Let's look at the underlying numbers. He was the worst on the team, an expected goal differential, just 16.5%. Outchanced 11-6 at 5-on-5, 4-1 high danger chances. He was outchanced, so gave up a lot of quantity and quality when out there on the ice tonight. So he definitely did get worked quite a bit tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, he was the one who went off for the bad change on the Tarasenko goal when he scored on that breakaway right down Broadway. You got to know that you don't have possession, right? Like, you can't go off the ice like that when you got Tarasenko coming off the board screaming toward the offensive zones. Just, that's not your time to be doing that. But I still don't understand why they don't just keep McCabe and Stetcher together. Like, why can't we keep McCabe and Stetcher together? Like, those two, so they played one shift together, basically. They played a minute 16. But, McCabe and Carlo, I get it. You want that to be a true defenseman, your shutdown pairing, because that's what they are. But we saw Stetcher, McCabe played his best with Stetcher and vice versa. That was a formidable shutdown pairing. And for whatever reason, Tanev comes back for one game, and so they move Stetcher off that line of McCabe, and they're reluctant to put him back. I don't get it. Both those two played really well with each other. Why can't they just give them a long run here as partners? I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand it, and that's something the coach can obviously control, right? Who you throw out there, the matchups. I didn't get where Berube was feeling it in terms of the matchups, because we're in a lot of matchups that were working favorably for the Leafs in this one.
Well, I didn't even just put them together. They only played a minute together. How come they're not partners? That's why I just make them partners together. If realistically, Riley, Carlo, put those two together, or even if you want, I suppose you can even have Riley and OEL, and then McCabe and Stetcher, and then Benoit and OEL, or Benoit and Carlo, however you want it. Whichever one plays with Riley, put the other with Benoit. I just don't that. To me, is how I'd write it down in the lineup card. But anyways, not my team, not my lineup card. I just comment on it when they lose 6-3 and defensively they're a mess like that. Yeah, I guess I can say a little bit more. But yeah, I didn't like, a lot of things that happened tonight. That's for sure. But we'll put this in the rearview mirror. Look ahead to Detroit on Wednesday. So we'll tee that up tomorrow. But on the other side, Dave, the Maple Leafs failed to land one of the bigger defensive trade deadline possibilities. Rasmus Andersson dealt to the Vegas Golden Knights. Let's dig into that deal, what it took to land him. The Leafs obviously could not have competed with that offer, but who could they pivot to? We'll get to that next in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with brand new episodes of the Locked On Leafs podcast, free and available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. Leave a like, a thumbs up, a comment down below, your thoughts on the Maple Leafs. Who should they get after Rasmus Andersson is no longer available? He goes from Calgary to Vegas in a deal yesterday, technically. Who else should the Maple Leafs go after? We'll have that conversation in a moment. But Dave, Rasmus Andersson going from Calgary to Vegas, the price paid, a first-round pick, a conditional second-round pick, which could become another first if they win the Stanley Cup, a prospect, and then Zach Whitecloud, who's actually a real solid third pair defenseman, can move and play some top 4 minutes at a pinch if need be. But, really solid defenseman in Zach Whitecloud. So you get essentially 4 pieces for Rasmus Andersson. The Maple Leafs were not going to compete with this. And it's no wonder. I don't think it was the tree living tax. I don't think the Maple Leafs had anything even remotely close that even could have competed with this offer from Vegas.
Not this year, probably last year when they were showing interest in Rasmus Andersson. I feel like Brandon Carl may have been a pivot from Rasmus Andersson, and there was a report that like True Living was not thrilled that he would have to pay more than maybe some other teams would have for Rasmus Andersson, a bit of a True Living tax. So like it's a decent offer. It's a decent return for Calgary because for two reasons. One, it was getting to the point where Anderson said, "I'm not resigning. I'm not going to sign a contract extension." So a bit of a Johnny Gaudreau situation, but Conroy was more proactive and just saying, "Okay, what can we do?" And he's like, "Well, if you're going to trade me to a team, don't trade me to a team that's thinking that I'm going to sign an extension." So that's for Boston. Probably saving grace that he said I'm not going to sign an extension because I took Boston out of that.
Yeah, that would have sucked to see him go to Boston,
and especially if they use the Leafs pick to get that done.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, good thing
that would have been the ultimate. Just at True Living, just we'll take a first round. We'll take the Leafs first round pick. We just weren't going to take it for True Living. We'll take it from you.
Yeah, you can keep Brandon Carlo. We'll just flip him into Rasmus Andersson a year later. Nice, nice.
So Vegas at least prevented that potential meltdown from happening. But you know, for the Leafs, like with this sort of deal, they don't have the assets. We knew that this was not going to. And like when we were talking about defensive targets, we weren't exactly throwing out. Yeah, sure, we had a couple of players that maybe would be nice to have, but we also like the chance of them going after some of these guys.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Well, so Dave, you see what the price, what the cost is for Rasmus Andersson. I mean, like if the Maple Leafs, and now this is the set price, right? This is now the market price for like a pending, unrestricted, a rental essentially. This is the price to pay if you want a top pairing rental defenseman or top 4 rental defenseman. Like it's at minimum a first round pick, a prospect, and a decent player. And if he's, a guy who could play on your top pair as well, like Anderson can, there is an additional, high pick as well, a second that could turn into a first. So, this is a very, very high price to pay. But that kind of sets the market for what the values might be as the trade deadline kind of looms. And also there's thoughts that there could be a bit of a trade flurry ahead of the roster freeze ahead of the Olympics. So even a couple of weeks from now, we could see a couple of moves being done. Vegas getting ahead of things here with this Rasmus Andersson deal. But now I'm looking and it's like, man, like if this is what the price is and now the market is set, like really that takes the Maple Leafs out of most of these guys who are difference makers, right? Guys who actually can insert into the top 4 and know that they'll do the job, right? Like you could talk about a couple of guys, like, I don't know, like a Dougie Hamilton, or you could talk about, like a Luke Shen, like sure, they'd be cheaper, but those aren't necessarily guys who you want to put in your top 4. You know what I mean? Like I guess Hamilton could, but like this makes me very weary about what the Maple Leafs could actually do at the deadline if this is what it takes to land a defenseman of this caliber.
And it really speaks to what everyone's kind of been asking lately is should the Leafs even be going and getting into this market to go and add? Like it gets to the point where also so many teams are in it or feel that they're in it that they're not going to sell, right? And that impacts what's available at trade deadline, right? So especially in the East, like you're not going to see other than the Rangers. I don't see any teams really open for sale. Calgary, we know, has been open for sale. Vancouver just dealt Kiefer Sherwood and probably will move off of some other stuff as well. Winnipeg.
So the Athletic just put out their 4th edition trade bait board 4.0. Our boy Chris Johnston just put it out there. So I'm just going to throw out the names of the defensemen that are on the market, right? So you got Dougie Hamilton. You've got Luke Shen. You've got Connor Murphy. who's been a name that's been kind of talked about for years.
Every year, Mike's going to bring up somehow, some way. Connor Murphy's going to bring into this conversation.
He's getting up there in age, is all I'm saying at this point. I think he's a pending UFA now. Justin Falk is another player who is ranked 14th on the board. Carson Soucy out of New York. But again, like Carson Soucy is one of those guys where it's like, hey, might be an upgrade on like Simon Benoit, but he's not someone you're throwing into your top 4 and feeling good about. No. Simon Benoit is actually on the list too at number 19 here from CJ. Yeah,
I wouldn't say no if a team was offering assets for Simon Benoit.
Could be addition by subtraction, my guy. Addition by subtraction. Andrew Peak of the Boston Bruins is out there. Brett Kulak. That's an interesting name, actually. Brett Kulak of the Penguins. You know, if the Leafs, if Dubas wants to do some dealings with Toronto, Brett Kulak is an interesting name. He was part of the Tristan Jarry deal, and it was always assumed that they were going to flip him at some point closer to the deadline. Mario Ferraro, long talked about as a possibility, although it seems like the Sharks are but in buyer mode after bringing in Kiefer Sherwood in a trade yesterday. So who knows if, you know, that's a player they'd be looking to move on from. But that's it. Those are all the defensemen that are on the trade bait board here from Chris Johnston. So any of those names,
very thin market.
Well, anything sexy to you where it's like the Maple Leafs, like a Justin Falk will probably command a similar. Would you say is similar to Rasmus Andersson? Maybe without the conditional pick. Maybe it's just
the thing is his age. He's older. He is 33.
Well, so Andersson 30.
I think 29, 30. So that the only thing that, and the other thing too is his contract, right? How many teams will want to pay Falk this contract? I mean, he's a top 4. He's a guy that, you know, can bring in the offense, but his defensive numbers have gotten better, have actually looked pretty good. So, and certain teams will like the fall contract because it's very front loaded from what I remember reading.
Yeah.
So, like, he's a guy I can think about, but again, St. Louis is going to want a pretty penny to be a seller in any case, right? Like Robert Thomas is being thrown out there as well.
Yeah.
Like, they got guys, they got decent. It's just Doug Armstrong's not always willing to pull the trigger because he's kind of in that half in, half out mode of whether he wants to. He's not going to do a rebuild. He will likely do a retool like he's always done. But how many guys he's willing to trade? Like Falk makes sense because of his age. Some of these other guys that they're throwing out there, like Kyrou, Thomas, I don't see them being really thrown out as much as maybe a Justin Falk, who's a bit on the older side.
Not unless they're like really stripping it down, I suppose. But yeah, like Falk, it'll be interesting to see. But like that's probably a guy who would still take a first round pick plus to land a Justin Falk. I think the way that he's playing right now, you know, I have no idea how to value what it would take to get a guy like Dougie Hamilton. But if Rasmus Andersson's going for 2 first round picks, a prospect, and a good roster player. You know, like if Jersey retains money here, I mean, they'll probably be asking for, you know, similar to that if salary retention is part of the program as well, I would think. But yeah, it just seems
they also have a really brutal cap situation right now in Jersey.
Yeah, so I don't know if they can really even do that. But yeah, like the problem is once Andersson comes off the board, it gets weak. It definitely gets weakened, and Vegas knew that. Vegas didn't want to have to pivot, right? Like they knew eventually they were going to have to replace Alex Pietrangelo, and they didn't want to have to pivot off of the top option, so they get him in Rasmus Andersson, and now it's left to the rest of the league to pivot and go after who's next, and probably have to pay a higher amount now that they know what the market is for, you know, top 4 defensemen in the NHL. Rentals at that. Like there's no term there. There's no contract extension in place. That's just the rental market, and that's going to make things very expensive, I think, for the remaining guys who could make a difference. Like I said, the Justin Falks or the Dougie Hamiltons. of the world. Are the Maple Leafs willing to pull the trigger and make that deal? Should they be willing to pull the trigger and make that deal, given where they are and their situation now with a lack of prospects, lack of picks, and lack of overall talent on the outside looking in on the playoffs? Should they even been thinking about moving top picks and prospects? That's another conversation that you could have as well. Let us know in the comment section down below. Where do you sit on this topic when it comes to the Maple Leafs? All in or all out? Because, staying pat, no in between, also doesn't feel very good, if you ask me. So Leafs in a weird situation, and I'm sure the next couple of weeks we'll find out a little bit more about where they're leaning as a club and as an organization. All right, Dave, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.